rumor has it someone, most likely Sidney Prescott, will be returning for Scream 7. And now with the SAG strike finally over, congratulations to our actors out there, we may actually get some kind of update regarding this film real soon here. But ever since Scream 6 released earlier this year that did not feature the character of Sidney, many fans have been saying, well, maybe this franchise doesn't need Sidney Prescott anymore. In today's video, I want to explore the question of if Sidney Prescott is still needed to make a Scream film or not. So now let's finally talk about one of the most passionate arguments in the Scream fandom to date.
Well, sometimes that is better.
Before we get into this video, I do just want to say hello, everybody. It's been a week since I've seen your beautiful faces. I was on break for so long that weed is now legal in Ohio, and more importantly, women's rights. Before some of you write KillJoy Jake woke in the comments section, relax. But over my break, I rewatched all 6 of the Scream movies and really gave some thought to this question. Is Sidney Prescott needed for a future Scream installment? I have been very on the fence with this question for a couple of reasons. I think that there's good points on both sides of this argument. On one hand, we have had many Ghostface killers specifically go after Sidney, which has weighed down some stories in the past. But on the other side of that coin, Sidney Prescott is one of the most fleshed out final girl characters of all time. To many, she represents overcoming trauma and is easily one of the best characters in this franchise, bar none. So let's dissect this argument a little further. So one of the biggest arguments on the other side of this coin about Sidney not coming back for Scream 7 is that Scream 6, once again a film that did not feature the character, made even more money than the previous installment from 2022, Scream 5, or Scream 2022. I call it Scream 5. Who actually calls it Scream 2022 besides me in these videos? Released on January 14th of 2022, Scream 5 pulled in $140 million from the box office, where Scream 6, released in March of this year, pulled in $169 million. It's not that big of a jump, but comparatively to the Halloween franchise, where Halloween 2018 made over $200 million, Halloween Kills didn't quite achieve that. It is impressive to see the second film in the rebirth get a little more attention than the previous film. But why is that? It's because of Jenna Ortega, without a doubt. About a year ago now, Jenna Ortega blew up with the Wednesday series on Netflix. All of you have seen The Dance, and if you haven't, you've been living under a rock for the past year. I hate to admit this because I think Scream 6 is a superior movie to Scream 5, but I feel like the only reason it made more money than the previous film is because Jenna Ortega blew up in between the time that Scream 5 released and Scream 6 came out. It's not because Sidney Prescott wasn't in it. Let's be real, it's because Wednesday blew the fuck up. I'm also not saying that Scream can't exist without Sidney Prescott being a part of it, though. I mean, I really liked Scream 6. I think it's a kick-ass entry and possibly even my favorite sequel of the whole franchise. Scream 6 was great because it focused a lot more on some of our new characters from the previous film and a specific side character from the past. It does a lot of world building with this fake Reddit thread filled with Ghostfaces online, which I think is really cool, and it has this punk rock attitude that I don't feel the franchise ever really tapped into before. Scream has always had a bit of an attitude to it, but not like Scream 6. The point being here, I think that there's a lot of good arguments on both sides of this, of why Sidney should come back and why she couldn't. Sidney Prescott, in a lot of ways, represents overcoming trauma. So I never want to see this character get the Laurie Strode in Halloween Resurrection treatment where she just gets killed for pretty much no reason. That would totally blow and ruin that entire aspect to the character, which has become one of her strongest facets. Bringing her back implies that she can die. That's a pretty good reason not to bring her back. I believe that Scream 7 can tell one more story with Sidney Prescott at its focal point. I don't think it's a necessity, like they don't have to do this, but this is a route that they can go down that would be highly entertaining and also fresh. First of all, the story revolving around the core 4 characters, that being Sam, Tara, Chad, and Mindy, has kind of been resolved in the previous 2 films. At the ends of both Scream 5 and Scream 6, it feels like this definite ending. Especially after Scream 6 now, I don't necessarily need another Sam Carpenter-focused movie. It's not a necessity, just like how Sidney Prescott being the focal point of this franchise isn't either. What's great about specifically the way that Scream 5 and Scream 6 end is that they're definite. They close their respective stories, leaving the possibilities for the next entry to be endless. Scream 7 doesn't need to tell a core 4 story, and it doesn't need to tell a Sidney story. It can pick either or if it really wants to. That's the best part about the positioning in the franchise right now, is we can go either way. There are a lot of negatives moving into Scream 7, especially with how many characters are still alive in this universe, but this is one of the many positives as well. We have a clean slate to go off of for Scream 7. Christopher Landon can kind of do whatever he wants. What I will say, though, is that there is one loose end that has yet to be talked about or have a story revolving around it in the Scream franchise that has been set up in these previous 2 films, and that's all about Sidney's family. In Scream 5, we learned a lot about our legacy characters. Dewey is sad living in a trailer park in Woodsboro all by himself, while Gil Weathers is in New York with a big old talk show. But we also learned that Sidney Prescott is married to Mark Kincaid and has a bunch of kids with the guy. Scream 5 puts Dewey in the limelight, Scream 6 puts Gale in that position, and then Scream 7 could potentially focus a lot more on Sidney. Something that would be great about this route is that if they handle it carefully, we could get a Ghostface killer that is unlike anything we've seen before, which is something that I think Scream 7 needs to do no matter what route they choose. Scream 6 promised us that this Ghostface was unlike anything they've ever seen before in the past, and then they proceed to give us a Ghostface who's kind of just a different version of Mrs. Loomis. So if Ghostface's objective is to kill Sidney and her family this time around, we could have the core four, maybe Gale Weathers, show up and help out, but we could also feature a Ghostface with a motive that we've never seen before. One I've pitched before on this channel, but definitely has some different context behind it, knowing that he or she is specifically going after the Prescotts. Or I guess the Kincaids? I don't really know whose last name they chose in this situation. Ghostface's motive this time around could be to just end the lives of everyone involved with previous Ghostface killings, so no one else decides to don the mask and seek retribution. In all 6 of the Scream films, it always goes back to the original. This whole group of friends from that original film have stemmed off big time throughout these 6 films, and pretty much everyone who has died in these movies is somehow connected to either like Billy Loomis, Sidney Prescott, Tatum Riley, all these people from the original film. So maybe our Scream 7 Ghostface killer has just been sitting in the background for a little while watching this all unfold, saying, damn, all these people keep dying who are close to the Prescotts, the Loomises, the Kirsches now. Someone's gotta stop that shit. You could have a Ghostface killer who doesn't think that they're inherently evil. They have good intentions for murdering people. This kind of standout motive would make the reveal so much more interesting, opposed to just pulling the wool over your eyes by making it some random character that you didn't expect. And while yes, I do think Scream 7 would benefit from having Sidney Prescott being a part of the story, I think the biggest thing that this next film needs to do is give us an original Ghostface. Don't give me no Roman repeats, I want to see something new. So is Sidney Prescott still important to the Scream franchise? I would say yeah. Just like how we approached Scream 6 by building an entire story essentially around Gale Weathers' brand new character trait of having a morning show in New York City, why not also formulate a mystery around this other thing set up with another character that really hasn't been explored all that much in this brand new run of films? To hit on some pathos here too, Neve Campbell got screwed out of a job with Scream 6. She declined to be in the previous film because the offer they gave her was not substantial in her eyes. Maybe they can correct that with Scream 7. There's a lot of reasons to tell this story with Sidney Prescott, not only because she was the focus of this franchise for so long, but I also think it would be a fun way to say goodbye to the character, especially if they market this as the final chapter, which in horror we all know that it never is. I think Scream can survive without the character of Sidney Prescott, but I do think that there is at least one more story to tell with her at this very moment. Maybe Scream 7 sets up something else to tell about the character in the future, but only time will tell in that regard. This is just the opinion of a humble potato farmer though. How do you guys feel about Sidney Prescott coming back for Scream 7? Leave me something about it in the comments below. Before I end today's video as well, I've just updated the merch store and my Patreon, so there's a bunch of new rewards and a bunch of new merch items. Also, if you buy something on my merch page this month, use code November at checkout and you'll save 15% off your order. Look at all these beanies and hoodies and shit. Go get yourself one for 15% off with that code I was just talking about. The link to all these fancy items is in the description of this video. Thank you all so much for watching me ramble about Scream 7 for like 8 minutes. Don't forget to like this video and subscribe for more horror content like this in the future. Please consider supporting me on Patreon to help this channel grow. The link for that is in the description below. And as always, don't forget to kill it out there, y'all.